Wonderful. Well, hey folks, my name is Kiara Venegas. I use they, she pronouns, and I'm one of the program planning and developing co-chairs for Who Eyes Black Professional Network. Thanks for joining us today. Today's conversation will center around the nuances of being Black and having a family or having familial or parental commitment as a housing professional. I'll be moderating the session and introducing the esteemed panelists who will then tell a little bit more about themselves. Panelists, I will kind of go over your names and then we'll kind of go in that order. Please share your role, your name, your pronouns, if you're comfortable, how many years you've been in housing, and briefly how you ended up working within housing or have moved out of the housing sector. We know that some folks may have, and if you have, wonderful. Today we have Jasmine Hamilton, we have Daisy Holly, and we have Sean Wilder Jr. So if you all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Hamilton. I also go by JHAM. My pronouns are she and hers. I am currently the Director of Housing Operations at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. I've been a housing professional for about the last 10 or 11 years. And I got into housing kind of haphazardly. I started as a student who worked in student affairs as an undergraduate and had certain needs that needed to be met that only housing could provide. And into there, just made a career of it. So I'm glad to be with you all today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daisy Holly. I use she, her pronouns. I currently am the Associate Director of the Office of Housing and Residential Life at Wayne State University, which is a research institution in the heart of Detroit, urban research institution. So it's a really exciting place to be. I'm a wife and a mama of Dash. So everybody hears me talk a lot about my baby boy. I've been in housing for about 8 years now. And what drew me to housing is I know I wanted to work with students. I know I wanted to do student affairs, but housing and home, what home represents for so many students that we support and serve, I knew that that was important to create spaces where they felt really comfortable laying their heads at night. And so housing has always felt like a great place for me to be impactful. And that is how I got into this work. I'm excited to just dialogue with each of you today. And thanks for having me here.
And then Sean, if you're able to introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name is Sean Wilder. I am an area coordinator at Brown University. I'm from Connecticut. He, him, his pronouns. I am the father of a wonderful 2-year-old who drives me crazy, but also gives me a lot to look forward to. Been in housing since, well, I guess since my RA experience, and that was 2016. But full-time, I would say for the past 2 years. So still fairly new. And then what drew me into housing when I was an RA, I had great supervisors, great hall directors, who looked out for me, and I always said I wanted to pay it forward for the next. And similar to JHAM, I realized that housing is the place where I can meet some of my needs, as well. So, that was the functional area for me.
All for introducing yourselves and being here today and being willing to share with us your experiences. So the intersectionality of being Black and working in a space that requires significant amount of your time and your lives can be taxing. Navigating all of this, heading home to children and your family members and your family commitment can really take a toll. So we're here to shed some light on those challenges and those hurdles. I believe AT will be dropping some of the questions in the chat, but first and foremost, and this is whoever wants to answer first, how do you manage the demands of your career in housing while also fulfilling your responsibilities as a family member or parent?
I could get us started. So, one thing that I learned in grad school, and I knew the phrase boundaries. Boundaries. I knew it, but I didn't really get to really understand it until I was me living it, and having to set my own boundary and what that meant for me. So, at first I thought it was like, yeah, I'm just gonna maybe just keep certain people at a distance is what I thought boundaries was. But having my family now, learning or realizing more that, we live where we work. I have to create that separation of, 8 to 5 is when I choose to be working if I'm not on call. And setting that boundary with my staff, with my RAs, or we call them CCs here, at Brown, setting that with my colleagues as well, so they know, like, in the work hours, yeah, I'm reachable. You can definitely, I'm gonna be communicative. I'm gonna be responsive, but I had to set that clear boundary because after 5, I have to now be in my full-time job of being a parent, of me being there for my little one and for my fiance. Um, so yeah, and when I was an RA, I had one of my supervisors, one of my hall directors was also a parent. So I got to see how she navigated being a hall director, but also being there for her family. And that was, for me, that was able to make me know that it's possible, it's doable. And she was a woman of color as well too. So seeing her navigate those spaces and still show up in all areas, it was just affirming for me to know, like, that's something I can do. Um, yeah. And then also I'll try to, so we know, like, something that comes with res life is training. We have training every summer. So I'll try to double and dabble and have my families come into spots where they can. So we have like a cookout in the beginning of training. I'll bring my family to the cookout. They get to enjoy the festivities as well. We do like different outings on off campus, and it's always a welcoming and inviting environment for them to come. So it's not like, so I'm able to do the work, be present for my job, but also I'm present with my family. They're getting a meal out of it or having a good time as well, enjoying the sun. So it's nice to be able to have that overlap for sure.
I will echo what Sean shared about boundaries being really important. Um, I have been really blessed to have worked with folks who have become close friends, and boundaries in that manner really means that when we're spending time outside with one another and maybe our children are playing together, that we try to not talk about work as much as possible. Um, and I don't do it perfectly, but it's one of the things that I try to be really cognizant of. I think the other part about boundaries is being really clear with other folks about why those boundaries exist. I think sometimes there has been this perception that your lack of availability because you have boundaries is somehow related to your personal displeasure for someone. And just being really clear about, well, no, I have this little one who requires my attention, right? Who requires me to be present when I am at home. Um, because that is my job, that is my responsibility. And so over the last couple of years, I've been really thinking about what that means as far as what kinds of conversations do I need to have in like interview spaces and helping people understand, like, I know you can't ask me about my family life, but you need to know that I'm a single parent. And some of these things that you have ideas about, I may not be the candidate for you, right? And I'm right, and I'm very up and forward about that, so that we can have an early on conversation about what adjustments might need to be made or what kinds of conversations I need to be having with HR, not in a bad way, but just to say, hey, these are my obligations. This role requires being on call, right? So I'm only going to be able to um, I'm going to need a little bit more time to sign up for being on call, for example, so that I can make sure that I have a sitter in the background. Um, and my sitter isn't on call like I am, right? So being really clear about those things up front has been helpful for me. And then I recently just got a second phone line. I got me a little cheap prepaid phone that I use just for work, because I need that separation, so that when I am not at work, that phone goes in the cabinet, and I close the cabinet, and it's wonderful. So that's one of the tips that I've been or one of the things that I've been thinking about highly around, like, yes, I have boundaries that I need to express just as being a person, but what are some of the tools that I can utilize to further support me, because I can sometimes be immature and not follow my own advice.
Wow. So Sean and Jayham really covered a lot of it. One of the things that I will say though is um, some of the things that I have done have included just resetting, just going through the different seasons of my life and knowing that I had different needs. So just thinking about like going through postpartum and working in housing, thinking about teething and going through housing, my kid learning how to walk, going through starting new daycares, your kid getting sick. So thinking about those things and knowing that we're also in training season, or we're also in these other really hectic, busy seasons at work, have been things that I've just been constantly learning how to navigate and how to manage. And so I would say how I manage the demands is really about setting priorities. Just to be transparent, my priority is always home. Because if home is not settled, I'm not really going to be a great employee to anybody. And so I do really intentional work in making sure that home is as organized or set up for success as possible, especially now, knowing that, okay, training is coming, move in is coming, move out is coming, knowing these things that are coming up, being really intentional and like, knowing, okay, but also I need to make sure my baby have his apple juice or he's going to cut a rug. So really having just this balance, knowing what the needs are, what my priorities are, and just setting those things out for myself, and then also taking care of myself too. So I know a lot of times early in my career I would say you can't pour from an empty cup, and it sounded cute, but now I realize I've run on an empty cup recently, and it really didn't work very well. And so making sure that I'm managing my responsibilities to myself as well, while also understanding the demands of work is really important to me.
Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah, self-care is so important, not just as a, a person, as an individual, as a professional, but as an adult, as a mother, as a father. Wow, absolutely. But what are some unique challenges you faced as a Black person in housing, a Black professional in housing, and balancing your work-life balance, and how have you overcome them? Can you share some strategies in maintaining some of the healthy balances while pursuing the career advancements that you've all made?
So full disclosure, Daisy and I work together now. We've been working together for quite some time, and she and I literally had a conversation that comes to mind yesterday. She and I had a conversation yesterday that comes to mind. Um, and I think this is unique, at least Daisy, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for you a little bit, unique to me, maybe a little bit to you too. Um, one of the things that I've experienced is that throughout my career, there has always been an assumption about my level of performance that is owed to my employer by being a Black woman. In some places, I have been, I have really good work ethic, and I'm proud of that. But what that has looked like on the to others looking at me has been, oh, okay, well, we'll place her here or wherever that place may be, because we know that she's really good at like getting things cleaned up that may have not have been ran the way that we wanted them to be run before. Fill in the blank to whatever other problematic statements you want to provide that as. That have been cognizant of what Black women have been in America, cleaners, housekeepers, that whole kind of thing. Um, because of that, when I added on this responsibility of being a parent, that it was always problematic, let me be clear. That was always problematic. But it was compounded when I was a parent, right? Because what I used to do, not having boundaries, right? Working really late or going in super early because I was single and living my best life, and that's what I wanted to do, right? But as a parent, doing 200% when really you should have been at 100 or maybe 80, right? The whole time, being a parent forces you to come back down, right? There is no excuse where you can say, yeah, I did 101 today. Absolutely not. You don't have the capacity for it. And so when people see that, they're like, oh, well, that looks a little bit different than maybe what it would have been 5 years ago. That's how my son is. I'm like, yeah, it should, because I don't have the energy that I used to. I also don't have the time, right? My roles have changed. Um, and also maybe we should reevaluate why you think Black women should be doing these things, right? And holding positions because you're waiting for someone else, because you've been waiting for someone else to like mess up or whatever the case may be, right? Just let's do some supervising and accountability and move on. But one of the things that I've been doing since, being really cognizant of that, has been leaning into discomfort. It does not feel comfortable for me to be performing differently than what I've had before. It still just doesn't feel comfortable. I'm still very much into where I value problematic methods of work. I do value that. And I'm cognizant of that. And it's really uncomfortable and it stresses me out, right? Where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I didn't do this thing. You don't need to do that thing right now. And so one of the strategies that I've been utilizing, one was, getting a second phone line so that I could just put that in the corner. And then my child has been extremely accountable to me, in saying like, hey, you have not spent enough time with me this week. What are we going to do about that? And yeah, he's 5 and he does have those conversations and it makes me feel really bad. So that guilt helps me to re-examine how I am moving forward in my work and what I am choosing to prioritize and whether or not it's to his benefit. And then the other piece that I will say, and it's not just for parents, it's just not for Black people, but if you don't have a therapist, get one. Because that can be extremely, extremely helpful just to have someone to bounce things off of, who can help you reprocess and frame some of these bad habits that you may have been picking up and doing all the while, in a healthy, safe way.
Well, I'll just piggyback because JM already started it off. So, so I will say that just working through one of the challenges has been working through imposter syndrome, as a result of being like this being perceived as this high performing person who's always just aiming for the top, always just doing really well at things, and then feeling like, oh snap, like am I as good as what people think I am, or am I meeting the bar that I've set before? And so really just struggling through that when I have needed to kind of step back, and maybe take care of myself or take care of home, and really feeling kind of that guilt behind that. And so some of the ways that I have overcome those is really a lot of internal challenges, honestly, but some of the ways I've overcome those challenges have been in self-advocacy. So really articulating my needs to my supervisor, or to the people around me and saying, hey, I need help with this. I would also say, I also have been just readjusting to the current and knowing that like, hey, yesterday you said you could do this or you felt like you could do this, and today some things came up and you have to readjust. And so really just knowing how to be self-aware and how to adjust as needed has been one of the ways that I work to overcome that. Sorry, my boss just messaged me. And so another strategy is just having people who know the work that you do. I think that one of the most unique things about working in housing and residential life is that people, I have family members who still think that I'm an RA, and I'm like, I'm that person's boss's boss now. And and I do really good work with that particular position, but people just not understanding what you're doing. And so sometimes they're minimizing the strain and the stress that may come along with it, or the responsibilities that you have that are unique to the work that you're doing. And so just really having people around you who understand the work that you do. They're able to tell you like, hey, you might be pushing too hard, or hey, maybe rethink this. One of the things I appreciate about JM is that we recently had a conversation about delegating a particular area of work and realizing that, hey, you feel that you have to always show up in this way, or you always have to do all of the things. But how about we lean into our resources and ask somebody else to assist with that? And so just having people in my village who know how to speak to the work that I'm doing, hold me accountable to taking care of myself, and just not call me a RA, which is nothing wrong with being an RA, but just like really allow me to grow as a professional and acknowledge me as such has been really helpful for me.
Yeah. So a couple different things that came through my mind with this question. Um, I think back to when I was in grad school, my last year, and I was job searching, and that's when my daughter was born. And I had to have a couple of real conversations with myself and with supervisors about applying to res life positions, because I wasn't engaged, I wasn't married at the time. So that already takes off some schools, because some Catholic schools, you have to be married for them to let you, like, they don't do the whole family and without you being married. And that was something that like I never really thought of until like I had to think of it. Like, that school, let's say I really wanted to go to Sacred Heart in Connecticut because it's near my family, already X'd out because of that. So that was something I had to sit down with myself and be like, hmm. And then I also remember there was a period where I kind of was in my own head and was like, wow, I'm a younger black male. I got a family, I got a kid, I'm in the res halls. Like, I kept on thinking, like, what are people gonna think of me? What are the students gonna think of me? Like, they hear this baby crying every night and like they see me walk in, and I used to psych myself out like, that's different. I know that's not like a norm, I guess I thought of back then in grad school. So I kind of, but then when I did come in with the baby, I was welcome. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, she's so pretty. Oh my God, can I see her?" And it was like it felt really relieving to get that type of reaction. Because I was in my own head thinking about, oh man, I can't I just felt off. And I would just kind of psyching myself out about that. But end of the day, end of the day, I'm a black male in America, so I got challenges all the time. And I be tired. I be tired of being at these PWIs. I be tired I'm at this Ivy League institution. I be tired because I always feel like I have to have some type of front or mask on, and I don't always want to put that on. So trying to like navigate that and be myself and be there for my family. It could be draining, it could be taxing. So I'm trying to fill my cup back up. I like to use that saying too, Daisy. I say it to my student staff all the time. And the way I do that is I get off campus. Me and my family we'll go back home for the weekend or take a couple of days and get away from all this. So I don't got to see no college students. I don't got to worry about anybody taking my daughter's clothes out the laundry machine and putting it on top because that just caused a whole bunch of stress. I get that separation. I get to go play basketball. I get to go see my friends that are just not affiliated with this and kind of be back in my own bubble. So that's always a great time. Um, and then yeah, I think that's really it for that.
So thank
Can
you all
I
for oh please,
can I
yeah.
add
No.
something? Sean and Daisy, you both said something that made me think about two things, right? So when I had my son, or when I was planning to have my son, I was a hall director. And one of the things that I had a conversation with at the time with my former husband was like, I'm not having a baby in the residence hall, right? Like, just that doesn't work for me. Um, and at the particular school that I was at, um, I could tell you exactly when the fire alarm was going to hit because I had developed the eighth sense at that point. So I was like, no, I can't do it. We got to go. So we moved. So part of my advancement was moving into roles where I no longer needed to live on campus. And that worked for me, and that was great. Since then, I've held several other positions since that time. And I think for anyone who is here and thinking about, okay, well, what does career advancement look like with a family in housing? Um, Ultimately, you are going to make the best decision for you and your family, right? Whether that's being on or off. You just need to be really clear about what that expectations and what it is that you're hoping for that experience. I would also, though, say that having a family also forces you to think about what does career advancement look like. So I am a director now. We love that for me. Yay. But it is, I used to tell my former director this all the time. When she would get frustrated or she had just come out of some really interesting meeting, I would remind her all the time, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? You are the director, and therefore you are going to be holding a lot of weight for the decisions that this department is going to have to follow, right? And they're not always going to be popular. And now that I'm in a position where I'm a director, I mean, I said it to her and I knew it was true, but I feel it now. And I have to think about, when I think about career advancement, my advice for folks is to think about career advancement. A lot of times we talk about as far as the titles, right? Get that title, be the highest up there, do this, that, and the third. Um, but that's not what career advancement is solely. Career advancement is pouring into you as a professional, growing in those skills. And those may be lateral moves, and there is nothing wrong with that. But it's really important for you to reflect on, if you're title chasing, I want you to take a pause, flat out. Just take a pause. Because if that's the only motivation that you have as far as career advancement, it's a limited point of perspective, right? Be One of the things that you have to think about is, does this title in this role allow me to be the full parent that I need to be? Right. Um, and you need to be asking those questions in your interview, frankly, too, right? What are the workplace culture things that are really important to you? Is it common for people to be scheduling meetings that start at 4:30 and end at 5? Because that just don't work for me, right? I need to be out the door at 4:50 so I can go get my kiddo from daycare, right? So think about what that means for you when you think about career advancement. Because it's one thing to say, like, I need more money and therefore I am job searching. That is a real need. You do you, by all means. But if your sole motivation is, I want to say that I'm the head honcho, or I want to be really impressive when I talk to my family or my colleagues, you're doing yourself and your family a disservice because you're not thinking about the totality of what it means to be in a position that may come with a lot more responsibility, without giving thought to what your capacity is to fulfill that.
You're giving me things to think about. Listen, can we talk after? Because I got questions, right? Sorry about that. How do you navigate societal expectations and stereotypes regarding work and family roles? Have you ever encountered any instances of bias or discrimination related to your family commitment, as a Black housing professional? And if yes, how did you handle all of that?
I can start. Just with the first piece, navigating societal expectations and stereotypes. So I am married to an entrepreneur. And so my husband and I were blessed to have had the flexibility for him to do a lot of the things that people really anticipated I would be doing because sexism. But so my husband was able to like really take time away from work and spend a lot of intentional time with our son. We had him during the pandemic. However, he was able to really and still continues to adjust his schedule to fit our son's needs. And that's out of obviously love, care, and concern for our baby boy, but also for me, as he's been supportive of me through my career transitions and things like that. He's like, wherever we going, just let me know where we going next. And he continues to be supportive in that way. On the outside, people have been like, oh, to this day, people still ask me, where is Dash? And I'm like, he's with his daddy. Like I just got out of work. Where's Dash? And I'm like, so really just navigating that can be hard sometimes because people really expect me to be home by 5 cooking dinner for my husband and my baby. And it's like, my husband cooks. And he helps, he cleans and he takes care of our son alongside me. We're doing all of these things together. So really just navigating that. Again, with that imposter syndrome, like, wait, do I need to show up more? But, just having him in my corner to let me know, like, we have a good thing going, like we have our system working, is really important to me. And so I have encountered some instances of bias in my work. I think that I've always been seen as this like mom disciplinarian figure even before having my son. And so there were a lot of times when I was in certain workspaces. First off, backtrack. I love student conduct. I love the educational side of it. I love being able to walk students through the process, teach them things, prepare them for the world outside of higher ed. However, people became very comfortable with like, oh, well, you're the disciplinarian now. And I do believe that's because I had the ability to be the person who could set those firm, like, hey, this happened, this is the outcome. Whether it be in a restorative model or in a punitive model, I've been able to have those educational conversations with students that people are not very comfortable having. And they believe that my observation and perception of their belief was that it was rooted in my identities as a Black woman. So much so that there have been times where people would sit on things and wait for me to come back from sick leave or maternity leave. I'm like, hey, this was something that we were just hoping that you would be able to help us come to an outcome or a decision on. And to be quite frank, it was frustrating because people would start to use words. I laugh about it now, but back then, back at a previous institution, I was called the Terminator because people would wait for me to have to terminate a person. Like, oh, Daisy, like you want to have this meeting either together or to lead it. And so it was like, at first I was like, bet, because I could stand 10 toes down on whatever my decision is. But then I started to really look at why we were using me to be the person to deliver tough news. And so I really felt like that was kind of like it was rooted in bias, and it didn't always feel good. So how I did move forward and in the present and even now in my current work where I oversee conduct, I'm very clear and concise in what my expectations are for the entire process, right? So I let people know, here's how we can all be consistent. If you have challenges with communicating certain outcomes or challenges communicating certain conduct needs or supporting different things, let me know and I will help you to work through that, because some people just don't like tension or they don't like conflict and things like that. Just because I'm a Black woman doesn't mean I like conflict. I've just learned how to navigate those spaces and how to walk people through it. And walk people through it. And it's because I'm an educator. I'm like, I'm going into this space with the mindset of how can I educate you on what happened? How can we talk through what happened? How can I educate you on moving past this moment? And so when I'm able to have those conversations, I am able to shift kind of that you the mama, you the Black mama disciplinarian to the this is how we as educators and practitioners can be supportive of the students within our care, and teach them and educate them even when we have to give them tough feedback or outcomes in different situations.
I don't have too much more to add to that. Thank you, Daisy. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is just kind of the afterthoughtness that I experience a lot. I think there's a lot of assumptions that housing professionals are just these single people running around college campuses having the best time of their lives. And that may be true for some of you. It was true for me some time ago. But I no longer advise student organizations. And so now, right, one of the things that, I have to challenge my peers about is, yeah, I won't be at any after hours thing. That's one a part of my boundaries, but also that's not a part of my work schedule. And so I try to help people remind them, right, that if there are things that are outside of the work day, right, we need to be cognizant of if we need everyone there, then we need to make sure that it's at a time that's appropriate for everyone. Making sure, and that's not just about being parents, it's about, respecting folks' ability to like eat lunch, and not be working on the weekend if that's not a part of their regular schedule, those types of things, and being flexible. We all have these blackout dates, but kids are unpredictable and they don't care about you not being able to call off work because they sick. So, right, and I've never had an issue with being able to get the outcome that I need, but it's always been a conversation of a convincing of helping people understand, like, yeah, we have these blackout dates, but my kid's sick and it's me, right? It's me or no one else. And so I'm out, right? And even working with folks to help them understand that you offering for me to bring my kid to work isn't helpful, right? What is my kid gonna do in my office for 8 hours, right? And so um just pushing back on those things and having those guiding conversations with folks can be exhausting, but they're necessary, a necessary part of expressing those boundaries and also making sure that the well-being of your family overall is intact.
Yeah. Um, I think from my perspective, being a Black father, society's already preying on my downfall. Because Black fathers aren't always present and whatnot. So the way I kind of navigate that is I don't like to let that cloud how I'm moving, or I'm always like to be on my own tunnel vision on my own time, because it's my life, and I had my dad present in my life, and that's one of my biggest motivators in being present in my daughter's life. Um, when it comes to work, I'll say I haven't dealt with any bias, thankfully. Thankfully, my father identity is my favorite identity, and I always lead with that. And I lead with it proudly too, knowing it could come with whatever feedback or backlash, but at the end of the day, like, this is who I am. This is who I chose to be, and nothing's gonna kind of strip that from me or make me feel embarrassed or in a sense anything negative about it. Um and also say my workplace definitely creates like a comforting culture where I feel like I can show up in that way. Um so that's just great to know that I have that type of support. When it comes to kind of like navigating work and home, me and my partner, we are like this. She is really my co-pilot. And we go back and forth with the task. We don't let the gender norms say who does what. I do a lot of the cooking in the house, mainly because I just love to cook. I love to cook and I love to eat. So why not? But but yeah, we do things the way that works for us. If it ends up being the day where she does the cooking, that's cool. I'm gonna help you out and offset it, and I'll do the cleanup part of it, and vice versa. If it's a day where I'm with the baby and she needs a break, that's okay because that's what works for us. So I really think it's just working with, if you have another person to work with, it's all about just working with what works best for you and not thinking about what worked or what was the norm 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, or what is society and media showing and all that, because they don't live with you. That's how I like to just tell myself, like, y'all aren't the ones putting no money in nobody's bank over here or putting no food on nobody's table over here. So if people do try to have their insight, I take it all with like I decide what I choose to hold on to and not, because what works for you might not work for me and my family. And I'm okay with also expressing that, as bluntly or as it needs to be told, because that's just how I've come to learn to how I want to navigate. Whether it's unapologetically or whether it's just like that's just who I chose to be now. That's just kind of what I've been stepping into. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to head into our last question. So in your experience, what are some key considerations or best practices for higher education institutions to create more of an inclusive and supportive environment for Black professionals with family responsibilities and housing?
I think one thing that COVID has taught us is you could do anything from home. You can do anything from home. You can go grocery shopping, you can shop, you can do your president job, your res life job. It can all be done from home. So one thing that my department, my university practices is we have work from home days. It's standard. Everyone gets 2 days to work from home throughout the semesters, and you get 3 days in the summer. And that's so great because the days where I do get to be home, I'm with my family. Helping out I'm helping out around the house. I'm taking my daughter to the park, and I'm doing some work on the laptop, but I'm also on the swings and whatnot. So it's just great to know that I'm not in the office 3 days a week. I'm not away from my family and my fiance for the whole 5 days out the week. I get to spend some time with them. I get to like, it's flexible. I'm able to now kind of be present in all my roles in a more supportive and a more like I just got that weight off my chest because I don't feel like, oh, I'm at work all day from 8 to 5. I know it's not easy with my child. Like she she can definitely run wild and drive you crazy. So it's like I'll feel bad when I'm away at work on stop and then I come back home and I'm tired. So it definitely is nice that work from home days. I promote that everywhere. I think every school should get on the wave. I think every job should get on the wave because it's doable.
I was wondering if I could say something. I'm probably the old guy in this group, and I just want to let you guys know, someone who has been in this field for a number of years, I'm impressed and delighted to hear the various perspectives that you all have been sharing. Because as I reflect on my years of being in this profession, there was a number of struggles that we endured that you do not endure. But the best part about it is that you are also being more assertive. You're showing confidence. You're also being competent in your roles. And all of those skills really go a long way when you're working in an environment such as ours. Now, it is that type of environment that, especially when I was in the field many years ago, you were finding yourself that it was 24/7, and we were able to work toward making changes and having those conversations with our supervisors to make sure, one, they understood that there is truly the need for a balance to take place. Secondly, just because I happen to be a man of color doesn't mean that I'm always going to have to deal with every issue that may appear that's related toward race, or I'm always going to be the one to call for the social activities because there's a dance at night and all these other things. But you have to put yourself in a position to negotiate and make sure that when you're negotiating, you're setting some, as Jay Ham has said, set your priorities and your parameters. That way, people will understand where you are. If they do not respect that, then in all honesty, folks, it's not where you want to be. You may get there, and people have a tendency to have, they'll talk wolf tickets and they'll tell you everything under the sun that you need to know about when you're there. And then when you get there, you start to do more of an assessment. It's like, what I was told compared to what I'm finding are two different things, and they don't seem to jive. So you're putting yourself in a position that, is it time to come to an impasse? Do I stay and put it and deal with it? Or do I look at the fact that they're not listening to me? They don't care about me as an individual. They don't see the need for me to have a balance, whether you're in a predominantly white institution or if you're like in the middle of nowhere, those types of places, they need to know you are an individual. You do your job well, but also in order to retain you, they need to also respect you and to support you. Fortunately, through the years I've been in this profession, I've been very successful in having that. There's been a few folks that I've had to have some sit-downs and let's have some straight up conversations. If that means that I have to put my job on the line, that's okay, because it makes opportunities for people like yourself to come behind and make those individuals say, let's not make the same mistake twice, or let's make sure that we heard what was shared with us before. So as we're going out and recruiting individuals of color, we're being even more cognizant of their needs. So, I really hadn't planned on saying anything, but I just wanted to say, you got this old guy that's listening, and I'm still in the field, but I hear you. I'm glad you're here, and you guys keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I think one of the things that um, really that I would like to piggyback on is the importance of having conversations. I think a lot of people make assumptions that no one's going to listen to me, or it's not really worth it, but it's absolutely worth a conversation, and people are interested in having those conversations. Don't make assumptions because of positionality or the power that someone may hold based off of what type of conversation you need to engage in. You do not know until you open your mouth, and when you become a parent, you gonna have to open your mouth, right? You cannot wait on others to assess whether or not you need something or if you need support. You got to put your family first, and part of that is advocating for the things that you need, or at least engaging in that conversation so that you can understand what that looks like. And then one of the things I will just quickly add is that I think for higher education institutions, supervisors, be clear about sick time policies. Um, know how to use them, know how to request them, whatever the case may be, know how much you got when you first get there. Because again, my kid did not care that on day one he was going to be sick with strep. Didn't matter. So guess who didn't show up for their first day of work? Ooh, awkward. And so, be really clear about, just some of those policy and business practices of the university so that you know how to navigate that forward and are ready to have those conversations as you need to.
I will just jump in really quickly and say one of the things, or one of the ways that I think that it could be more supportive and inclusive. We talk a lot about blackout days and the type of work that we do, but I encourage folks as they continue to rise into those leadership roles to encourage new practices such as encourage days or things like that, where, hey, like this is a season where it's really, an excellent time to take time away. But also to Jay Ham's point, encouraging people to use your time. When Jasmine was my supervisor not too long ago, Jasmine was like, you got to do what's best for you. And so really, when you're in those leadership capacities, knowing like, hey, encouraging folks to use their time as they need it. And then the only other thing I'll add too is like, as you go up, not in necessarily the title of your position, but as you just become more seasoned in this field or any place you go, be intentional in disrupting some of the problematic things that you have maybe experienced or you see people doing. And that disruption sometimes is speaking up, and other times, or speaking up out loud. And sometimes it's just a quick email to HR, or just any way you can disrupt things that are not really beneficial to that space. I encourage you to, if you can, have the boldness to do that work.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, letting us get to know you a little bit more, answering our questions, giving us some insight. Give them up for our panelists, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Shout out to AT for putting all of our links in the chat. I was wondering if any of our live or Kuhuai live folks or anybody else has any questions or any like shout outs or anything else before we kind of take off. And thank you so much once again for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing out. We appreciate all of your insight and everything that you were able to give us today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.